Are you there, Eric?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's nice to see you.
Good to see you too. Is
It's
this your
nice that
house?
what? Oh, this is
Is
my
this?
house. Yeah, I made this little
Oh
set,
yeah.
just a room divider and a curtain. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. I have to angle my phone too. I have this little stand in my car. I'm just gonna adjust it a little bit.
Okay.
Let's see if that works. Okay.
So I'm
This
glad
okay?
you when I saw your photos of being on vacation, I was glad for you that you were able to connect with nature again and just do a nice relaxing rejuvenation
Yeah.
before I think that everybody even related to this case of Chad Daybell, I think it's stress for everyone just for it to be going on, whether you're watching it or not.
I think that's true. Yeah. No, the vacation was nice because, I mean, for the last 4 years, ever since the story broke on Chad and I was excommunicated, there was just all this turmoil in my life, and I've still been trying to figure out what the heck happened, and my wife and family and I have just been unplugging and just
Hmm.
re-identifying ourselves, and vacations and concerts and stuff have just been a great way to just unplug and just kind of rediscover ourselves. It's been nice.
Yeah, that's a huge thing to be excommunicated when you were born. Weren't you born into the LDS church? Kind of.
Yeah, for sure. We're long eighth generation Mormons, like we go way back. I'm related to Joseph Smith, who helped found the church. And so it's like a big point of pride in my family, to be such strong, valiant, faithful members. It's just ingrained in us for sure.
And what was the basis that they excommunicated you?
Well, I had a podcast and a blog. So the podcast was with Julie Rowe. The blog was just my own like research, scriptural research. I was really into doctrine and researching scriptures, and so the church just has a real hard time with you. First of all, asking questions, thinking, stepping out of the box.
Hmm.
They want to be the ones who provide all truth, all knowledge, all information to you. And if you go anywhere else, it's like, red flags go up and sirens start to sound, and you know what I mean? And so I had this blog, and I'm just posting stuff, and they didn't like my content. I worked for BYU Idaho, which is a Mormon school, and so the first wave was they gave me a warning and gave me 2 years, and then came back and said, "Look, we don't like your podcast. You need to take it down or take another job." And I was like, "Okay, I'm out. Thanks. It's been fun."
Yeah.
They just don't like you sharing your beliefs, your views
Yeah.
publicly.
So
Well,
so all everyone's thinking is supposed to be whatever whoever's designated as the leader of the church, the so-called current prophet,
yeah.
what they say, and then if you have any thoughts or you want to explore scripture, they kick you out or ostracize you.
Yeah, it really feels that way. Like, so for example, more specifically, the reason why I was exed was because I was exploring a doctrine called, well, reincarnation.
Hmm.
I that is not taught anywhere in the Mormon church today, but it was early on. And me and some friends found some quotes and things from Mormon scripture, from Mormon, early Mormon leaders who were talking about it. Even Joseph Smith and Brigham Young, some of these early founders said quite a bit about reincarnation. And then we found little hints of it in the scripture in the New Testament. And me and my friend wrote a book called Multiple Probations, which is kind of a Mormon word for reincarnation.
Hmm.
Um, and we explored these. We had 100 references, and our approach was, look, this was all discussed at one point in the Mormon church. It was actually discussed at one point in Christianity,
Oh,
but
it
it
used to be in the
constantly,
Bible. It used to be, and there's a lady, Mary Baker Eddy. She wrote a whole big book with every single fact. Like
yeah,
reincarnation has been a part of Christianity and most religions forever. So
yeah,
to suggest that they have this magnificent world and as spirits we only come in here one time and then that's it,
Yeah,
is actually more ludicrous than to accept the idea that we would come in multiple times.
yeah, I agree. And that's what a bunch of us started figuring out. It wasn't just me and my friends. There were others who were kind of waking up to that truth as well. And but us writing, so our approach was just like, look, it was fair game once to talk about it, and it's still in official church publications. Can't we just explore it and ask questions? Like, let's bring it back to the floor and talk
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, at least
But
discuss it.
yeah, and I said, look, and I always put disclaimers on my publications, like, this is not, this is not an official church publication. The opinions here are the author's opinions only, all that stuff. And then ultimately their sentence in their letter to me was, for their grounds for excommunicating me, was for teaching as doctrine what is not church doctrine, which in itself is flawed, because I already admitted it wasn't church doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you cast me out for saying that? So
Especially if
it's
you're quoting the older church doctrines that did include it, then
yeah,
you know what I mean? How that on every level, that letter makes no sense.
right. So exactly, and so that kind of begs the question: what are they afraid of? What is the problem with discussing this particular belief system, especially when it's held by so many people in the world, like you just said?
Could you tell
And
me the name
so
of your
I
book real
think that,
quick? Just real quick, in case people,
yeah,
you wrote a whole book about it, right? Reincarnation.
yeah, it's a pretty short book. It's really more of a reference book, and just it hits high points. But it's called Multiple Probations: A Lost Doctrine Remembered.
By Eric
Uh,
Smith. I just want people to know that in case they're interested in learning more, especially if
Thanks.
they're LDS and stuff like that.
Yeah, it really is written for a Mormon audience, but it would kind of work as just anybody who's Christian. It's just going
Mm-hmm.
to have a few like Mormon scriptures, but I think it's a good book, and I
Yeah.
think it's good at least to start like questioning this, like, why is the church, meaning the Catholic Church or Christianity, so opposed to reincarnation when it was taught at one point? And it's it just leads to a whole new rabbit hole of what is the big threat. Well,
Mm-hmm.
what I've concluded personally is, when you believe there's one life and you teach that, you have to live a damn good life, no mistakes, you know what I mean? And,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so you can implement control systems to affect the outcome of that life and make it the best one possible. And so there's all these control systems. You've got to pay your tithing, you've got to do this, you have to do that, you have to do that in order to be a good person and qualify for the kingdom. But I just don't believe that whole narrative anymore. It's got
Right. So
got to
yeah, they've got you more pigeonholed into the fear-based following the leaders. If you believe this is your only shot at going to heaven, this life is your only chance to earn your way into heaven, and
yeah,
then they give you all the rules and the financial. You have to pay them 10% of your money, right? Your whole life,
right,
or you're on
right.
bad terms with the church.
Yeah, it's true. Well, what it comes down, and they wouldn't say that like that, but if you follow the logic, this is the logic to a good Mormon is somebody who pays their tithing. They don't drink coffee or tea or use tobacco or alcohol. Some of those are fine. Those are good things. But you have to pay your tithing. If you want to go to heaven, you have to go to the temple. You have to make covenants with God in the temple. One of those covenants, by the way, is uh, to give your life, your oh, I used to remember the wording. You have to be willing to dedicate your life and your income and everything you have to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, to the church, to the institution, not to God. It doesn't say anything about God.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that, then you can qualify. So,
Then you
so
qualify to go
you,
to heaven. And so they've raised these people since they're little,
yeah,
little tiny children. They're going to hell if they don't spend their entire life giving 10% of their money to this corporation, really.
yeah, yeah, that's really true. And to drill it, you keep talking about being a youth, a young person. They have a song, well, they have a primary program where the kids go and learn songs. And a lot of these songs were written in the 70s. They're post they're post World War II. You know, the MK Ultra was alive and well,
Mm-hmm.
and had started. Well, it left the government systems and started finding its way. The MK Ultra principles found their way into religions, and one of the concepts there is repetition. Teach them at a young age. All these other things. One of their songs is "Follow the Prophet," and in that song, I mean, 80% of the lyrics is "Follow the Prophet." I mean, literally, follow the prophet, follow the prophet, follow the prophet. It's just over and over and over. And so these 3, 4, 5 year olds, you know, just learn that from a
Yeah, so they're
young age. You
brainwashed
do
from
it.
a very early
Nothing about
age
God.
not to question. Oh yeah, not about God. So and I have a question. So like the lead prophet or whatever of the Mormon church, does he have to demonstrate that he has like prophecy skills? In other words,
There,
if he is really a prophet, he would be receiving divine guidance. Is he, or is he just running the corporation?
well, to me, obviously, he's just running the corporation. I see that now just as plain as day. But if you were to ask a faithful, active Mormon, they would be like, "Oh yeah, he receives revelation all the time. We have a conference we do every 6 months, and he speaks at it." Okay, fine. So what they're saying is we get to see our prophet for a grand total of 1 hour per year, and in that hour, it's a talk that was written 6 months prior, highly curated, polished. I'm not sure he even writes it himself, to be honest. I've actually heard he hires people to do it for him. Um, but you get the very best they have to give, and to me, it's really about policy.
Mm-hmm.
It's really spiritual at all. It's just kind of pay your tithing, do this, do the things that will qualify you for heaven. It's really nothing spiritual. It's all outward, right?
Yeah. And I think the way they have it set up, I suspect, like when I first got involved with this case with Chad Daybell, I didn't really have experience with Mormons. And the Mormons I met were the AVOW Mormons because I had posted on Christopher Parrott's page. And then all of a sudden I got 4,500 friend requests and they were all the AVOW people.
Yeah.
And they were the nicest people probably I ever. Like they were so supportive and so the church seems to be set up where you have the outer circles of these super, super nice people, right? And they're living this clean life and they're actually very kind. But then you go up and up into the temple and at the higher levels, there might be super good people still, but then there's also some a dark or this trafficking stuff and there's also documentaries about high level Mormons being caught up in drug trafficking and prostitution rings. And
Human
I don't
traffic.
know how prevalent, I don't know if that's an aberration. Like, I don't know if the majority at the highest levels are also trying to live that good, clean life, or if they're using all the good Mormons as a cover. I don't know. That's one thing I was trying to figure out. And also, one thing I was trying to figure out is where Chad got these ideas.
Yeah. Well, I have to address what you were just saying about the the levels and this. There's kind of like two paths. There's so much I could say about this, but to keep it simple, it really appears that there are two systems within the Mormon church. One is what most of us see. It's the stuff that comes out on the news, right? And it's what you do on Sunday and all that stuff. It's the some people call it the right hand path. Well, there's apparently a left hand path, which is the underground stuff. They use the same
Mhm.
buildings, same temples, the same people who are in leadership positions are underground, and they're coordinating some really atrocious things. But it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? That if that Satan, the dark forces would, if you're going to hide your operation, you do it in the place where you would least suspect it, which is these churches a lot of times.
For
I'm sure
sure.
that's happening in the Mormon church.
It's also happening in Christian churches, like at the spiritualist church. It's not uncommon actually to have people come in who have been religiously abused or like essayed or weird ritual torture type stuff.
Yeah.
at different Christian churches too. So it's like on all levels, people of the darkness hide behind churches.
Yeah, I agree. I think I've seen that firsthand. I went to last year. We went on a little trip to San Francisco. My wife and I. We went to one of those really big cathedrals. It's a beautiful place, really beautiful building. We went in, and immediately I was like, "What's that smell?" And to me, it smelled like a hospital, like cleaning solution and
Uh-huh.
body fluids. And I went in the altar. I looked around the altar and noticed right away that there was some smears on the ground, some red colored
Oh
smears. And
my God.
I saw it all over. I have video of it. I'll show you if you want. But
Yeah, yeah, I'd love to see that if you could email it to me. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
so
so
so they're doing blood sacrifices, and what brand of or denomination of type of church was that?
I I don't remember. I suppose it would be Catholic, but I don't really know. I can
So
find
it
that
was a
out.
landmark. Well, as far as Catholic, like there was this one guy, I think he was like a bishop or way high up in the Catholic Church, and he actually stated, and this is from him, not me. He stated you can only get to a certain level in the Catholic Church if you have not sacrificed a human baby.
Oh,
His name is Maciel, so it's like Michael, Miceal. So there's darkness regardless of which religion it is.
yeah,
Um, I think some people are point to the Mormon church, but maybe that's Christians because they think nobody else is supposed to be any other religion, or
right.
or they point to it like it's a cult. Let's see. I'm gonna look up. There's like 10 um like indicators. Like what to you is like an indicator of something being a cult?
Well, anymore, it's when you have a leader, a single leader, or a few at the top who you're basically supposed to surrender your entire sovereignty to this person because they speak for God. And if you ever see that, oh, and by the way, they're infallible and they can never misspeak. There's this early
Hmm.
doctrine church that somebody made up. It's not scriptural. That the living prophet or oracle of God can never misspeak. God would take his life first.
Yeah.
So what's
So
this
it's unquestioning
Yeah,
allegiance to the leader.
yeah, totally. Yeah, and in the process, you give up your sovereignty. It's really it's a repeated. It's what am I trying to say? It's the same pattern of what happened to the Israelites with Moses, right?
Hmm.
God goes and talks to Moses, and he tries to talk to the Israelites, and they just couldn't have it. They didn't like seeing this pillar of smoke. It was scary. I don't know. It was too powerful. Maybe hearing the voice of God was too much for them, and they basically said, Moses, look, you go and handle the direct communication with God. Um, will put our trust in you, and so people just want a person to look to. It's hard to trust in this supreme power that you can't see, and
Hmm.
would rather put our confidence in a man or a woman. And it's just, I don't know. I think it's a test God has maybe put in place for us to, what are we going to seek him, or, give our sovereignty and our spirituality away to a person in between? I
And
don't know.
then so
I'm idea.
Chad was trying to be like a mini prophet where it sounds like he told everyone that he was directly receiving from God, so he would tell them what was up, right?
Yeah, well, he didn't really say that. And you wouldn't
Huh.
say that Mormon because it was like, no, that belongs to the prophet of the Mormon church. But um
So he didn't tell the other Mormon because on the stand they were trying to give that idea to the jury that
well,
Chad is presenting himself as he has a direct connection to God, and so he's telling everyone else what that's what they're trying to say. I don't know if it's true though. You might know
well,
because you
I,
watched him.
I think it's true, but I just think it's important that people understand he didn't say it outwardly
Hmm.
that he was a direct mouthpiece for God or any of that. He just did it. And
Hmm.
people recognized he was tapping into something.
Right.
If he said, I actually believe if Chad said, I'm the living oracle, listen to me, do this, do that, I don't think people would have followed. And see, this is one of the points about a cult, how they work. they're usually not very direct like that. They leave some ambiguity so that you form the conclusions, and then you can't come back and say, well, you said this,
Yeah.
because he never said that.
And
You
then all
followed me.
the followers are allegiant. So, if you want to be part of this group, you got to be a follower too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you get a bunch of free will people who authentically give away their sovereignty to this person because they saw them do something or say something that felt true. And that's the other point. Nobody starts a cult. I don't think anybody starts a cult on pure lies, right? If you did, people would recognize it and run the other way.
Mm-hmm.
So how does a cult leader do this? Well, first of all, they don't say they're any kind of leader, usually, not at the beginning anyway. They don't pound a bunch of falsehoods at you early on. They teach something true, and something true you probably haven't heard. So I don't know where they're getting that. I don't know where they're getting their truth. What I recognize, and what I think a lot of people recognized in Chad and Julie Rowe and people like that who had gifts, was they were saying stuff that I've felt for a long time was true, but I've never heard. I
Mm-hmm.
used to hear it from the pulps of the Mormon Church or the Catholic Church because they have a program or an agenda or a curriculum almost that they have to stick to, right? And if you venture out of that, it's fringe, and they get scared and worried, and they want you to stay in the box. But so there were a bunch of us who were curious and recognizing there's more truth to be had. We're not getting
Mm-hmm.
the full story here from our inbox religions. Where can we find it? Well, then a bunch of people like Julie and Chad come along who have gifts. They're tapping into an external source, a divine source, if you will, and then it's like, oh, something there resonates with me. I'm going to listen to this for a while, right? And then you're following, and then by and by, you're like, man, they've said so much truth. I really buy this. I believe it. And then they've got your attention, so now they can say whatever they want, and it can be false, and you're going to be like, that's awesome, you follow it. That's what I've seen now with the Mormon Church, with Chad and with Julie, and I'm observing it in a bunch of other break off fringe groups in Mormonism and even Christianity, where you've got this charismatic leader following that template.
Yeah. The Mormon isn't exclusive for being cult-like, because Christians try to tell their followers that if you go outside Christianity, or if you even question whether the Bible was influenced by power mongers who are trying to subjugate people with fear, if you even question anything, you're going to hell.
Yeah, yeah,
And we're going to ostracize you at church. So they do that too, but I think the Mormon is just a little more stringent, you know. But
yes.
do you think that Chad, at the beginning, when you kind of first met him, do you think his goal was to control people, or do you think he really believed that he was helping people?
I think the latter of what you said is true. I still, and look, I'm willing to believe now, after all we've been through in all this, maybe I've still got some brainwash I've got to work out. I don't know, but what I truly see and authentically believe is Chad was a good person. He had good intentions. I think he had some unhealed childhood wounds and traumas that he had to deal with. Maybe, like the fear of being abandoned or not accepted for being a little different. That's actually
Mm-hmm.
something I can do.
Mm-hmm.
These fears, I think, played into him as a man, who of wanting to be validated, accepted, understood, and I think that played into how he went about doing, God's work,
Mm-hmm.
supposedly. So I think his intentions were pretty good. I really think when Lori stepped into the picture, she brought this murderous sort of like, just a darker side to it all, and he was open enough. Maybe there was a little brooding cult there of their own that they were making, and maybe Chad kind of adhered to Lori and she kind of adhered to him, and they gave up their sovereignty and individuality, and then just created this monster, this mess.
I know it's hard to figure out, because I always feel sorry for people, even when they're the most horrible, worst people. But listening to the phone calls that they played in court, which I know you probably didn't hear, but there was these phone calls they played with there was like Chad, Lori, and then, 3 or 4 other people on the line as well. And it sounds like Lori is a real driving force. Like Chad kind of goes, yeah, yeah, and then he throws in information, but Lori's like this driving force of what people are supposed to think or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's hard
I
to figure out which one is the most evil.
I agree with you. It is hard, and I'm not sure it's necessary to do that, pinpoint it on somebody, because each brings their own piece. And to be truthful, you can't separate Julie Rowe from Chad Daybell's story, because they were joined at the hip in so many ways. They were kind of like the father and mother of this movement. They were like
Oh.
presidency. They and
So
people.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So you're saying, and up until Lori came along, Julie Rowe was like Chad's female, like you said, mother and father figure, for this little move. Right.
Yeah, yeah, it was like that. I think you could ask just about anybody in that movement, and they would, they might not use the word father and mother like I just did, but definitely like the heads. And if I'm honest, Julie, in my opinion, had the more conviction or sway in the relationship, but Chad was almost more of the level-headed, kind of like the
Calm.
yeah, the person who would speak publicly usually, but Julie would kind of call the shots. And I noticed
Wow. I didn't
that,
realize she was that powerful in this. And was this all the preparing of people looked up to her at one point?
well, I wouldn't say all. I'm sure that there were many preparing people who didn't like her or Chad at all. There was more in the preparing of people movement there.
Mhm. It's just
Julie,
they had their own faction, and the people that did
yeah,
follow him, Julie was actually the more predominant over Chad,
I would say.
up to a point.
Yeah, I would say so, but I observed oftentimes just some little power struggles between them. Chad, it coming from a Mormon church, especially like a patriarchal dominant church, is I'm sure that he probably saw himself as, well, I'm the man, so
Mhm.
I'm the one that this or that and
Yeah, that will
speak.
make the final decision or something.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's just naturally shaped by the Mormon upbringing. And but my point in bringing up Julie was, well, Lori's kind of the same. Lori's this female role who has kind of a powerful personality and persuasion, like Julie Rowe.
Oh,
I think,
definitely. She's real manipulative. When you hear
yeah,
recordings of her, she manipulates everybody around her.
yeah, yeah. And Chad seems to have. I think he had his own little going. Again, I just believe in this idea of childhood traumas kind of shaping a person. If
Mhm.
they're validated as a child or accepted or understood, you're always going to seek validation and acceptance. And I think Chad had a need to be validated and accepted by women figures,
Uh-huh.
and because it's not just Julie and Lori, there were other women that I know that he was talking to, probably inappropriately,
Mhm.
through messages. Um, I think he really enjoyed and felt validated from female figures in his life. So,
Right. And do you think him and Julie were having a sexual affair?
uh, you know, I've heard comments about them being close. I saw them walking close, not like holding hands or anything, but there was a good association. But to me back then, I was probably too naive to really recognize this
Mhm.
is appropriate. To me, it was
Mhm.
just, those guys are cool. They have a unique relationship. They're speaking to God. They're getting revelation together. It's pretty cool. It's kind of special,
Yeah.
It it didn't seem inappropriate at the time, but now looking back, yeah, it probably was.
And then do you think that Lori displaced Julie, or had Chad and Julie already kind of went their own ways? Like Lori shows up, Chad and Julie are these figures, and then Lori shows up, and did that knock Julie out of the way and cause problems, or how was that whole relationship?
I'm not sure because I never knew Lori in the time that I knew Chad. But I only knew about Lori after the story broke on media, and I was like,
Uh,
she, you know? To me, it was always just Julie and Chad. So I've had to do some piecing together some of these puzzle pieces since it all broke. But actually, I just heard yesterday from a friend, I don't know this, that Lori Vallow Daybell wrote a song that actually kind of praised Julie's name, kind of like it started with Julie, you know, and I don't know. So it was
Really?
complimentary of Julie. So it was like
Oh, it was
Lori,
complimentary or insulting?
no,
Complimentary?
of Julie Rowe and her
Oh,
relationship.
yeah, she liked Julie Rowe, huh? Because Melanie Pulowski said they were first heard Julie Rowe before they even heard Chad or something.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I haven't heard the song, but it sounds the way my friend pitched it to me was it's like, no, Lori liked Julie. They were all kind of like friends.
Oh, I see.
So I don't know. I don't think,
How did Chad when before all this broke, was Chad still tight with Julie Rowe or had they gone their separate ways kind of?
definitely didn't go their separate ways, but definitely not tight. But there was a notable shift. We all noticed and commented on it with Chad, maybe a good year and a half before Tammy died.
Mhm.
He just became distant, and I think looking back, that was probably about the time he was hooking up with Lori and some others.
Yeah, so he started having a public self and a private self that he wasn't sharing with everyone.
Yeah, that's got to be true. I didn't know about it. I don't think Julie Rowe knew about it, but she may have. She definitely knew some stuff I didn't know, but yeah, because they were very close. They texted quite often, but I do remember there were notable like arguments and separation there a good
With
year
Chad
and a
and
half.
Julie. With Chad and
Yeah,
Julie. Yeah, because
yeah,
I remember when this all first broke and I was putting up these readings about where's the missing kids. That's the first time I ever became aware of Julie Rowe because they said, "Oh, this psychic friend of Chad's is saying," and they were showing her, maybe she put up the video and she was saying the kids are fine, they're off at a beach and all this. And maybe that's just sometimes when you're psychic, if you got to be super careful because like if you want something to be true, you might say it more or think.
yeah,
And another problem with being
yeah,
psychic and being in the public eye at the same time, I noticed, is you want to please people. So
yeah,
people are so happy with your work, but then they want you to do X, Y, Z, and then you try to put out more where if your heart's not all in it or you're doing it for them instead of your connection with spirit, then
yeah.
it could get muddied, I guess, less accuracy.
Yeah, I think you've hit some really important points there, and it's stirring something, a memory of mine. When I first met you, I was kind of interested in how the spiritual process worked for you, and you said something that stuck with me quite a bit. That created a nice contrast for me in an authentic, genuine desire to seek truth versus ego.
Hmm.
And this is what I saw. You said something like, whenever I go into I don't know what you called it, but when you go into
Meditative
that
state.
mode, yeah, meditative state of trying to understand what happened, that you cleared your space, that you did everything you could to get a clear signal. And I
Right.
think you like, I'll spend hours doing that, making sure it's clear, and then I'll go and then the stuff comes. And I was like, that was such a contrast for me, because to me that suggests humility. Like, this isn't about you. It's not about
Hmm.
your will. It's about, or your ego. It's about truth.
Yeah.
And that was a stark contrast with what I had observed in some of those people. They didn't need to go through that process because they were they didn't need it. They had it all, they had direct access to all truth, was kind of the
Yeah.
the way to me all the time. So
So they wanted everybody to feel like if they said something, it was coming from spirit because now they put themselves up as leaders, I guess. Like
yeah,
me, what I try to do, like I teach psychic development. I try to tell people everything is colored by the filter that it's coming through. So if they read a book, and then a lot of people will write books, based on stuff that's not even true because they just want to sell books. Like, I've got this soul contract, I've got this, I've got that. And it's like, you know what? maybe some people do have that, but not everybody. And I try to tell them you're going to get your best information from your own self, from literally going into prayer and meditation and sitting there and opening this up yourself and see where you come with it. And not only that, but then when they listen to other people, also realize that's how that person felt at the time based on the information they had, and it might be different now. And it's always ever evolving, and we're all trying to understand, the meaning of life and the meaning of the spirit world, and to always be open to this being a changing process of search, not to look to me or anybody else as like some kind of guru, but instead to seek within.
Yeah, I love that so much. Like that's one thing after I left that whole scene 4 years ago and was exed and everything, I started seeing really quickly when I came across people like you, it's like, wait a minute, there's a lot more people who are interested in the welfare of mankind and humanity in this world than just Julie or Chad. Like, because it kind of pitched to me like they're the ones who are gonna make this great change in the world. And what I had always felt was this will be more of an organic, like everybody contributes who wants it, like there's going to be pieces coming from her and him and them, and it's going to be individuals, like a grassroots effort rather than a top down
Right.
hierarchy.
That's
So
my belief, is that teaching people to open up themselves, or at least stressing the importance of that, is far better as far as the earth having goodness, having the positive and the light. If all people are open, then that would do more than trying to get people to follow you, say.
yeah, well said.
So, okay, so there's a few huge questions like I in 4 years haven't figured out. So like 4 years ago, before they ever found the bodies, and I was meditating, they were showing me all these demonic influences with Chad and Lori. And that's when I got up from that meditation and I looked at the Satanic calendar and found that both children were murdered on human sacrifice days. And they got married on something called Day of Revelry. And this is in the Satanic calendar. The Day of Revelry is when you have sexual celebrations, literally to celebrate the humans you sacrificed to the demons that year. So it's provable that they were following, they're all one day off, they're one day later. So they were following a calendar of this. And both of the days the kids were killed are human sacrifice days. And then one time Lori is texting Chad going, when is it time? Because she wanted to do JJ. And she's like, when is it time? When is it time? And Chad is saying, not yet. And so what that indicates to me is that Chad was the one following this occult calendar. And and I'm wondering, you know, in Mormonism, is there an occult calendar or a calendar that have you ever looked up those days in any kind of Mormon calendar? Or I'm trying to track how did Chad start following this demonic calendar?
Yeah, I can't answer that, and I can't say Mormonism has anything like that. So and that's actually the first I've heard a lot of what you just said. That sort of thing was never discussed that I knew of. Where did he get it? I don't know, but I'm starting to have my beliefs that he may have been raised in that left-hand side of the Mormon church that in the shadows that people don't see. And
like the animal sacrifice and the blood.
Yeah.
The blood thing is real, but besides what they talk about adrenochrome, I know just from people I know say that are Santeria or this and that, what they talk about is even when they're killing chickens and pigeons and stuff, and they spray the blood all over everyone, and then that allows the spirits, whatever spirits that they're calling, which are obviously the dark spirits, they use the fresh protein in the blood, and they can manifest so you can see them stronger. You can actually see them.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard that, but it doesn't surprise me. I know that they really honed that dark system. Yeah, and that's pretty dark indeed. I just think there are signs like with the burning of the children and some of
Uh-huh.
that. You mentioned the occult dates. It's all screaming ritual,
Oh
satanic
yeah,
ritual.
these
Yeah.
were human sacrifice murders. These were ritual human sacrifice. And on the day where JJ was killed, that one also calls for cutting off certain like hands and stuff like that. But see, what I was getting in the readings before they were even found was that Alex was sick to his stomach when they dismembered Tylee. It made him sick. So he didn't have a problem with killing her. It was just the actual gore of it. And he wasn't willing to do it again. And so they taped JJ's hands up. And they did all the stuff you would do of that, of the rituals called for on that satanic calendar, but they used duct tape instead of actually doing that with him. And it was because Alex wasn't willing to go through all that again. So because it nauseated him.
Yeah.
Isn't that
Yeah.
sick? And
It's
I figured that out, and I keep trying to look for where did Chad start, and maybe Lori turned him on to it, but like maybe Lori was the one who was into it, and then she gave it to Chad, and he was studying it. But somewhere along the line, they started studying this old occult stuff of doing this on certain days.
that's yeah, I don't have anything to offer to that. It just I'm inclined, just because of my own bias, to say Lori brought that to the equation. Chad just didn't seem like that kind of person. But I'm also totally aware that there's this double life standard in these people who live this left hand path, you know.
Oh yeah, they get good. Like Melanie Gibb.
Yeah.
They get good at having a front. Like on that meditation, I didn't upload it because I thought people really can't handle it. So if you look how bad my readings were, this was, they were showing me like Chad connected with this lake of evil, and then they were showing me like 20% of him is this front that everybody knows and sees, but there's this like real evil under there. But with Lori, they were showing me even when they were out by the fire pit doing what they were doing. They showed that I saw her, and I saw a demon just go right across the yard and go in her body.
Oh,
And another time in court. And the thing that is weird about that is before I ever put anything on the internet, I was working on these cases for like 6 years. If I would see a case that drew my attention of a unsolved homicide or a missing child, I would do a meditation, type it up, and send it to the police. Um,
yeah.
and so the point of that is that I'd never seen any demonic activity. I recognize the energy. There's a certain energy every time there's a murder. There's a certain identifiable energy present, but I had never seen demons before this. Never.
Yeah.
And real demonic activity going on. And the calendar. And so it was after they showed me that I got up. I was tripped out, and I got up and just Googled, and anybody else can Google it too. It's not hidden. You can Google that calendar and see these dates. And I put it out, right? I put it all over the internet and all these groups, like, use this calendar. And less than 36 hours later, my perfectly healthy dog was dead on my bedroom floor when I woke up for no reason.
Yeah.
And I swear it felt like the omen in my room. The presence of this dark energy, and it was shocking to me. A couple other things happened, but it's like I before that, I don't think I ever even had an opinion whether demons were real or whether demonic energies were real. I didn't have an opinion until I experienced what I experienced, and now I'm just like, at the New Age churches, I'm like, do not sit here and try to make me go along with it. They're like a cult too. They're a
Yeah.
Luciferian cult. And if you don't deny that even demons or negativity exist, then they'll ostracize you. So it's like, God, our whole world is full of forced beliefs, regardless of who. It's forced beliefs on
Yeah.
everybody. But I guess
Yeah.
I went on a
Yeah.
rant.
I couldn't
Sorry.
agree.
It's just I keep trying
No,
to, like,
totally
for
okay.
4 years, I have been trying to figure out, where did Chad start going down this route with this dark occult information?
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't say. I couldn't say. My only suspicion is that he is from a part of Utah called Springville, which I've heard only since leaving the church and as I've researched things is kind of a hot spot for the satanic ritual abuse. In fact, there's another national trial going on. I don't follow these things enough to know, but the head attorney of the Provo, is it Provo County or Utah County, is charged with satanic ritual abuse and stuff. It's that very same area that Chad was raised in. So there is
There is an undercurrent of there's a part of the people that go to the church and that goody, but they're really doing dark stuff in the background.
yeah, for sure. And apparently it's found its way into the government down there, the city government, probably the, each little congregation of the Mormons. And it's, if you said this to any Mormon down in that area who's on the right hand path, they'll be like, you're crazy, that's not possible. But what people have got to start waking up to is there's definitely two paths, and they're living and breathing the same air, and walking, going to the same grocery stores, sitting on the same pews, and worshiping Jesus on one hand and worshiping Lucifer on the other. It's just, that's where we are right now.
That's what the first time I saw Melanie Gibb being interviewed, and it's okay if you don't want to talk about her, but she, she's wearing the little pink sweater and she's talking like a little girl and she's quoting Bible verses. And I just looked at her. I'm like, you're a witch. You are a black witch.
Who is, in your opinion?
Melanie Gibb. Melanie
Oh,
Gibb, like in the end of this Yellowstone reading I did, I think it was March of 2020. So it's still 3 months before the remains were found. I'm saying that I'm like talking about the death of JJ, describing it completely accurately to a T. And I'm saying there's a lineup of people here watching.
oh,
And it's so outrageous. I can't accuse anyone. They blurred the faces, which means they do that. They can show me faces real clear. So when they blur the faces, that means it's either they're not going to get charged or it's dangerous for me to see that or whatever. But I saw people present. And then what I describe, unless there is a bunk bed in Alex Cox's condo, which could be, then that means JJ was killed in that condo. And the struggle that I saw was not something that people would be able to sleep through.
yeah, wow.
And it trips me out. I guess the prosecutor Wood has had over 300 emails and texts with this to me, she's higher up in the witch chain than Lori.
Interesting. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I hadn't heard that, but
Oh, it makes me so mad every time I see her. I'm like, why is she not charged? And there's texts from her that look like maybe she knew about Charles ahead of time. And then the day after Brandon Boudreaux was shot at, Melanie Gibb was walking up and down the street, talking to neighbors. And I think that's why she admits about it, because she was a neighbor witnessed her. She walked up and she wanted to know if Brandon had been shot or not.
oh,
So
interesting.
she's in this deep. And I don't know. I don't know if you knew her or wanted to say anything, but
No,
I,
I'd never. I was unfamiliar with that whole Utah group. Lori, Melanie, all of them. I
oh,
didn't know
that was
about.
where Chad diverted into this group.
Yeah, I think that would, the dates would definitely line up a
And
good
then
year.
Lori was pretty. And so if you imagine Chad, he's kind of like dumpy looking or whatever. Maybe that was it. It's like Lori's like the cheerleader fantasy of puberty. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. No, she's pretty. I heard through Julie Rowe that Chad and Tammy had, intimacy issues, and I think Chad had unmet, sexual desires and that sort of thing. So sure, bring in a little cheerleader body, that is willing to believe everything you say, and give you the validation you've been looking for. Sure, it's a perfect storm for all the disaster that's come from it.
This whole thing. And then Lori's father was an insurance agent. Did you know that?
No, no.
He's also a diagnosed schizophrenic, so I think that's can genetically be unlocked. But
Oh,
and that's according to court papers over Melanie Pulowski's fight. Melanie's father said that. So uh oh, what was I going to say? Oh, her father being an insurance agent, she knew that if someone got killed and you got a large payout, so obviously that was probably her idea to kill Charles for the insurance money, right?
yeah, that way for sure.
And then she
I
just reels Chad into poor Tammy.
what you've just introduced to me is some of these Utah folks who I didn't know. I think, and mixed with the Chad that I thought I knew at the time, that the more dark sides of it I feel came from that Utah area. Because
Mhm.
if you talk to anybody from Idaho, man, Chad, he was quirky, but he was nice. He was humble. He was kind. We saw little things once in a while that were weird, but there was nothing like dark or mischievous, you
Uh-huh.
know.
Like, what
So
do you mean that you saw that was weird?
um, I don't know. I guess I can't really think of anything specific right now. Just the way, maybe
So he
just the way.
wasn't perfect, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But he
exactly.
wasn't, you didn't see him like deviously plotting, burning, carving people's names in black candles and
No,
stuff.
exactly. Nothing like that. He was just a good neighbor, kind of person. You wouldn't ever question a personality like his. Um, but I think I really feel like you might be onto something with Melanie Gibb and what you said there. And I don't know. And then just him being from Springville, there's definitely some satanic like activities in that area, like a hot spot of some kind. So I don't
That's
know.
really interesting about Springville. And and also there was that YouTuber, right? That she was locking her kids. She's Mormon too. She was locking her kids in the closets and torturing them and doing all kinds of weird stuff. She's on trial now, I guess. She's from somewhere in Utah also.
I haven't heard of that story.
Oh, yeah, I don't even remember her name because I
Yeah.
just watched one documentary about it.
Yeah.
Well, I've got about 20 more minutes. Do you want to go over did you write a book on how to leave a cult?
No, it's funny you say that because I have a friend who's telling me I should, but I
That's what I
haven't.
feel too. I feel like that would be a good book because having to leave the Mormon church involves so much psychological unraveling that probably some of the reasons people stay ingrained is they're afraid to even psychologically think about leaving.
Yeah, yeah. I may do that. I definitely thought a lot about there's bullet points forming, and it is what you just said is spot on. It's psychological warfare is what it is. Cult activity. You never really know you're in it until something causes you to come out, or you're exed, or until something happens where you can actually safely start asking questions and looking at the facts and looking at history. And only then are you open enough to even ask the question, am I in a cult? Nobody will do that, you know. And so I would love for Mormons especially to realize just what kind of system they're in. They all think it's wonderful and beautiful. They're on the right hand path. They talk about Jesus in their meetings, but they're not truly examining their hearts and whether or not this person in front of you is actually speaking for God. They're not asking those questions. It's just assumed, and they've given all their sovereignty away. And it's tragic to me. It's heartbreaking. Um, the liberation that comes spiritually, physically, emotionally when you walk away from a cult is unparalleled. The freedom, it feels like a whole mountain has been taken off your shoulders and you can breathe again, and you have a simple authentic connection with God and your fellow man. And it's I would love for everybody in a cult to experience that freedom. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
I think it would be really good for you to write a book. And I think people would be really interesting, especially in light of your experience, not only with the Mormon church, but with Chad Daybell and Julie Rowe, and just the
Yeah.
whole idea of breaking free of having your whole mind turned over to somebody else to program and being able to think for yourself.
Yeah.
And really, honestly, like everyone that watches TV is being programmed. I mean, we're all being programmed in some way, you
Yeah,
know?
definitely. There's like you could say there's a media cult that's going on right now that we aren't even aware of, or political party cults. I mean, they come in all shapes and sizes. We
Yeah.
don't. Um,
Our whole
yeah,
society is all about people trying to get control of your brain, get
yeah,
control of your, so I mean, you could even extend it to all programming, you know. But leaving the Mormon church has to be hard because like I watched one documentary and the thing that made me real sad inside was like, so some woman decided she just wanted a break. She didn't want to be part of the Mormon church anymore. Well, when her son and stuff was still Mormon, and so when he got married, she had to sit outside the temple. They would not let her witness her own son's marriage. And to me, that is the one thing that made me say this church is not of God. I just, and I know the spirit guides would say that's not ignorance. Um, a massive display of ignorance for me to insult people who are trying to reach God. But at the same time, what people would stop a mother from seeing her son be married?
yeah. I think that's a classic example of cult activity. It's not. It's totally unnecessary. It has nothing to do with God, even though they think He ordered it to be that way. It's not. I think you're picking up on a more natural, loving Creator than what Mormons have recognized is actually out there. And that, unfortunately, that sort of story is pretty common. I hear about it, almost weekly, of some parent who can't go visit their child's wedding and stuff. That's pretty common.
But on behalf of Mormons, so that made me all sad, really sad, and I always remembered that. And but on behalf of all Mormons, when I was running this group, right, it was called Psychics and Sleuths, and we were trying to solve the case, and the kids weren't found yet. And all these AVAL people were in there. And I hit a breaking point. Like after one reading, sometimes I'd have a mental breakdown, and I would depend on my admin Teresa. She would help me through it, like come back to normal. But I went on there and I just went on this rant against Mormons. And I'm like, you have this wall of silence. And I was going on and on. And then I went to bed and I was meditating and I felt the presence of my spirit guides, and the exact words they used was massive display of ignorance.
Oh yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
I'm like, oh my God. So the spirit guides were not happy with me for doing that. So I had to go back on there. I didn't have to, but I felt that I needed to go back on there and apologize.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did go on there and write an apology and told them, I'm from what I'm seeing these children murdered and I'm having a mental breakdown, and I went on this rant against your church, which I don't even understand, and I am extremely sorry and all that. And the point of this is I was very, very impressed by how kind they were to me after
Yeah.
that. When they surrounded me in love and understanding, forgiveness. Like I was just like, wow, these Mormons are very, very high quality people. So at least the ones that were in there and the ones from AVAL, which keeps getting knocked down, those ones were actually the kindest, some of the kindest people I've ever met. So
Yeah.
I don't want people to think I'm knocking Mormons in general. I see how it's all manipulated. Whatever darkness goes, they use this nice good people as a front.
Yes. That is perfectly said. And I appreciate your humility in recognizing that. I also see those good people too. They're my family, they're my friends. It's just what people really should start to understand is there is this dual path system, and it's the same in all these other institutions. People always talk about Masonry. The conspiracy theorists talk about
Hmm.
Masonry being a Satanist organization. Is it? No different than the Mormon church. The answer is yes and no. It's
Hmm.
the way these work is these tend to be multi-tiered, leveled
Hmm.
institutions, right? You see that hierarchy structure system is so predominant in the Mormon Church. It's definitely there in the Masonry. It's there in Catholics. It's it's the perfect type of system to use and to leech onto as a Satanist, because what you do is at the lower levels, you don't mention anything about your dark covenants and secrets. You promote the thing that's light, that's accepted, it's the right hand path. And only at the higher levels do you promote the darker things, after people have proven themselves, proven that they'll keep secrecy or risk losing their life.
Hmm.
That's how these systems function. And then the lower tier, which is the predominant majority of people in the organization, act as this safety buffer for the people at top. They're hidden. It looks like this virtuous thing they're doing, but at the highest levels, some of the most atrocious things are happening. I
Hmm.
know that's church. I know that's true in Masonry and other institutions. It's just how they do it.
And the first time during this case, and I looked up Mormon rituals or whatever, and some people have brought hidden cameras. I instantly recognized that as Freemasonry that they were actually doing in the temples.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
So, and I think when they do it on the levels like that, the people who are on the left hand path, the dark path, they're looking for people who seem to enjoy something dark, like whatever they put in front of them. Finally, at a point when they know they have their secrecy, they know they have, then they're going to look for that person who they see a sense of enjoyment when something dark happens, to kind of recruit into that.
Yes, I think you're right. And I would add to those who might enjoy the darkness, at least those who are unquestioning and unquestioningly loyal to their superiors. Those people can get pulled in too. And Mormonism is full of those kind.
Uh-huh.
They'll do whatever they can to please their leader. And that makes a really good candidate for your higher ranks. As long as they
Yeah.
can keep, that's all that matters.
So that personality type that's not going to think for themselves, that's not going to confront anybody, that's just going to go along with whatever their
Yep.
leader says. Yeah.
Yep.
So do you have, is
That's
before we
uh,
stop, is there any like more points you want to make? Do you have a website still?
uh,
Or did you quit
well,
taking
not
care of
really.
it?
Doctrinalessays.com. I'm not really doing anything on there. All my stuff's still published there if people want to go peruse it. It's just that it's just came from such a religious programming that
Hmm.
I think it could be useful to a lot of more trying to ask questions and start looking beyond the box. My website would be really good for them. It might be useful to some Christians and stuff, but by and large, I don't know. I'm not promoting it or I'm doing much with it just
You're
because
just
I've
kind of
changed
taking a
somehow.
break, kind of taking a break yourself, going through it. Yeah, like you said, changes and
It's more
analyzing your life and stuff.
much a break is actually I see the programming in all the religious institutions right down to the scriptures and what Constantine and others have done to the scriptures. So I'm just cautious about what I proclaim as truth
Hmm.
when the Bible or a religious principle or a doctrine of some institution, because it's all been infiltrated. It all has
All
this
of it.
right hand messages in it. And so it's not really a break. It's like I'm going a different direction. I really like the spiritual path of just turning inward, meditating, and just having a pure connection with God and the universe, and being a good person, serving others, being kind and compassionate oriented. That's my new religion. It's simpler,
Yeah.
going on hikes in nature, and all this stuff is more what I want to promote now, rather than a belief system of any kind.
I think your journey from the Mormon through Chad Daybell, through breaking free, and then the conclusion that you're drawing right now, that would be a beautiful book.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You've actually given me some confidence. Maybe I'll look more seriously at that.
Yeah, you know how to, yeah, you're a good person. I know, like we've had a few conversations, um and I could tell in your heart, Your heart is good. Your heart is a good, you're a good person. You have a good
Thank
heart. You're clear. When I talk to you, I know that you're speaking from your heart. You're not making stuff up. And I just think I think I value you as a good person.
thank you. Well, it takes one to know one. So I appreciate that and feel the same towards you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for giving me time today. It's been nice. Good to connect with you again.
Really good to talk to you again, Eric. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I wish you well.
Thanks. You too. I
So could I ask you one question?
yeah, sure.
The last time we talked, you seemed at the very end, you felt a little guilty for falling for Chad's stuff. Have you resolved that in your mind now?
I don't think so. I still wrestle with like, what have I done? I'm in a place right now of like, I don't want to incur any, um, like karma, like with people. I don't want to mislead people, misguide people. I don't want to hurt people. And so I'm really in a place of evaluating like, excuse me, what have I done wrong in all this? And how can I make it right if I did anything wrong? And just prevent future hardship and heartache and divided families and all this stuff. I want that out of my life. I want peace, So I think I'm still working on that.
Well, I wish I could fix it for you. I wish like I could assure you that you did what you believed was right at the time and that your intentions and in the spirit world, every time I meditate and everything, intention is like super important on the spirit side.
Yeah,
Intention, and your intention was to spread truth. And Chad is a great deceiver because I just remember when I used to send you the readings and tell you Chad was guilty and all this before he was
yeah,
arrested? Well, I
yeah,
was doing that to all his friends, right? It wasn't only you, it was probably half the town of Rexburg I was doing that to.
yeah,
I could not convince even one that Chad was guilty, not even one person. So,
yeah,
I hope you can forgive yourself because, like, I don't see a single thing bad that you intentionally did. And I'm sorry that he deceived you like that. I wish I could just bless you and relieve you of that. But I think, if you wrote about it, like if you started to write a book and you wrote the last chapter first,
yeah,
like where you are now,
yeah,
I think that might be good because just the stuff you're talking about, I think would really draw people in because a lot of people have been deceived.
yeah,
And it probably not on this level that gets this high profile attention, but there's a lot of people like the BK killer. He was a leader at his church for the whole time, 20 years while he was doing all this bad stuff. And these people do that. And I just I feel for you, like to feel still like something might be your fault or something like that. You know what I mean?
yeah.
I wish I could just take it away. I wish I could just take it away. You know?
Well, yeah, I feel your sincerity. I think it's going bit by bit, and I think conversations like this really help. And to be recognized by others is not that that matters, but it at this point it is an inward path. I've got to reconcile something inside me, and
Yeah.
rather than an outside source,
Right. Yeah.
But
So I can't fix you. I can't fix you. Right. Yeah. I get
yeah,
it.
but so encouraging. What you've said just gives me hope, and so I thank you for that.
Okay, well, I just hope the best for you, and I hope you're surrounded in love, and I hope you find the healing that you need. I hope the angels surround you and provide you guidance.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot.
Okay. Okay. Bye, Eric.
See you, Donna. Thanks again.
Okay.